A very warm welcome to the sixth recitation, which is Introduction to JavaScript. And I hope everyone is keeping safe and is doing great during this mid time of the semester. So before we start the recitation, just a gentle reminder to watch the previous recitation videos and submit the Google Form quiz to be marked for attendance. Also, make sure that you write the honor code statement as given in the assignment instructions so that the assignment can be graded. So for today's recitation, we will be looking into like what is JavaScript and how we can create some basic programs. And while we create these basic programs, we will also look into some debugging techniques. So the slides are already uploaded on Canvas. So you can go under Files, under Recitation Information and my name. You can see a Recitation 6 folder, and inside of that, I've already put up the slides, as you can see. So let's get into what is JavaScript. So JavaScript is a text-based programming language, which is used both on the client and the server side, and it allows us to make the web pages more interactive. So you have HTML and CSS, which are languages that give like structure and style to the web pages. But JavaScript, it makes these web pages interactive and it engages the user in different forms. Like it will give alerts, it will ask the input for like the user for an input. And we'll be seeing this in the further recitation. And also we will be coding some of the stuff. So for now, in this recitation, when we have to code JavaScript, we will be using an online editor, which is js.do. So like you just have to go on Google and type js.do, and you will find the editor. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is how the online JavaScript editor looks like. And you can see like a lot of code is already written over here. So for now, what we will do is just select all this code and delete it. So we have like an empty screen. And what we will do is try to write all our code on the left-hand side. And when we hit on run, we can see the changes on the right-hand side. So since this is an online editor of JavaScript, we actually do not need to write like create an HTML file and write everything in that. Instead, all we have to do is just create a script tag. So I'll just write script and make sure that we open a tag. So we have to end the tag as well. So we have the closing tag as well. So whenever we want to write any JavaScript code, we have to make sure that our code is inside of this script tag, as you can see. So that is the main thing. And before we go ahead, I just want to mention that W3 Schools has really good resources for JavaScript. So just type JavaScript W3 Schools, and you can see that it has a tutorial and it uses like it tells you everything on how to use JavaScript. Note that we don't use all the elements that are there inside of it. So only the things that we are trying to use, make sure like during our recitations, make sure that you inculcate them only while you give the assignment. So yes, so if you can see this editor over here, we are just writing the script code. But ideally, when you have to submit the assignments which require you to work with HTML and JavaScript both, what you have to do is you have to create a .html file. And like usually you will have the doc type HTML element, the HTML body, and all of that. So you have to make sure that the script tags, when you have to write JavaScript, the script tags are inside of the body tags. So you will create a .html file and have the HTML coding inside of the HTML files. And if you have to put in your JavaScript, you will have to create the script tags, which will be inside of the body tags. And under inside of the script tags, you will have your JavaScript code in it. So this is just to help you like get through the assignments and follow the instructions as they are. But for this recitation, we will be going ahead and using this editor. Okay, so yes, let's go on to our first program, which is the tax calculation. So we did like, yep, yeah. So this is the slide. So as you can see on the right hand side, I have the pseudocode for the tax calculation example that we did in our previous recitation. So since this recitation is about introducing JavaScript and trying to understand how to code the basic elements, instead of problem statements, we will be looking at the pseudocode. And according to the pseudocode, we will try to code the same thing in JavaScript. So if we see the pseudocode on the right hand side, you can see that we are doing a few instructions. Like we start the program and then we read a few variables. Over here in this example, it is revenue and expenses. After reading these variables, we are doing a computation. And the computation is that we are trying to find the earnings, and the formula is given as revenue minus expenses. And after we do the computation, we are trying to put some conditions. And we are saying, like, if the earning is less than a certain amount, then taxes are computed in a certain way, else the taxes are computed in another way. Like the formulas are different according to the conditions. And then finally, we just display the taxes. So this is what we are going to convert into our JavaScript code. You don't have to worry, it's very easy. First thing is, let's try to figure out what are the variables in the pseudocode. Variables as in what are the terms that we need an input for if we have to like do any computations. So if we can see, there are two inputs here that we need for sure, which is revenue and expenses. We need to know what the revenue and expenses in like we need to know what the value is so as to find the earnings, and then only we can find the taxes. So in this case, we have two inputs. One is revenue and the other is expenses. So we have figured out what input we have to take from the user. Okay. Now, the next thing is how many variables are there that we need in total to like run the code. So you can see we have the variable revenue, we have expenses. We are calculating the earnings, so that also becomes one of our variables. And we have another variable which is taxes, because we are also calculating taxes. So in JavaScript, the first thing we will do is try to declare the variables. So let's go to our editor and declare the variables. So whenever we have to declare the variables, we use the keyword var, which denotes the variable. And we tell the code that, okay, in our program, we have these four variables which we are going to use. So, and I'm just going to name those variables. So we have revenue, then we have expenses, earnings, and taxes. And remember that after every line that we write in JavaScript, it is important that we follow it with a semicolon. This is a very good practice at an industry level, and it helps the code to like understand like, okay, when like about each statement that is there. So make it a habit to always end each JavaScript line of code with a semicolon. Okay, if you don't put the semicolon, sometimes you might encounter an error. So it is a best practice to do that. So we declare the variable, and after declaring the variables, okay, one thing to note is that in the pseudocode, we have a start and the stop. You don't need to specify like start of a code or a stop of a code, because in JavaScript, we always have a script tag which open and end. So it explains that, okay, the code is starting and ending now. So yes, so the first thing was we take the variables and we mention what the variables are. So we have done that. Now, after mentioning what the variables are, the next thing is you can see it says read revenue and read expenses. That means we are taking an input from the user. So in JavaScript, whenever you have to take an input from the user, you have to use the keyword prompt. So here we have to take input for revenue. So we have the variable revenues already initialized. So we'll say revenues, and we want to take the input from the user. So for taking an input, we will use the keyword prompt. So prompt helps you, like it basically helps you take input from the user. So you write prompt and then followed by circular brackets. Inside of the circular brackets, you'll have double quotes. Okay. And inside of the double quotes, you can write any sentence that you want it to display. So let's say enter revenue. Okay, I want it to display this thing. And remember to put a semicolon. So we have the variable and it says revenues, that is prompt enter revenues. Let's try to run this code and see what happens. So you run the code and you can see I have a prompt here, like a pop-up here, which says enter revenues. That is because taken we have used a prompt here, and and inside of the prompt it's written enter revenues. So whatever sentence you write under those circular brackets, that would be like a placeholder of what will be viewed to the user. And then over here you can just enter the number and say okay, and it will be saved in it. Saved, like that number that is there that the user has typed goes into this variable called revenues. Now we have to do the same thing for expenses. So I'll say expenses and then prompt, and then I say enter expenses. So we have done the next step also, which is taking the input from the user for these two variables. Now, the next thing is compute earnings as revenue minus expenses. So this is a basic arithmetic operation. And in JavaScript, when you have to write an arithmetic operation, you can just go ahead and write it the way it is. So you say earnings is equal to revenues minus expenses. So what happens is we have initialized all the variables, then we ask for the input from the user for the revenue and expenses. Whatever input the user gives goes into these variables. And then when I say earnings equal to revenue minus expenses, it will take those values and do the arithmetic operation as needed. So we have done the computation. And then you have a conditional statement of if and else, and it says that if the earnings is less than 500,000, then the taxes will be 20% of the earnings. And it says otherwise the taxes will be 30% of the earnings. So like it's an if and else statement here. In JavaScript also, we will write it as an if and else statement. So you have to write if, and then in the circular brackets, you need to write the condition. So the condition is if the earnings is less than 500,000. Okay, so you write if, and then you write the condition under inside of the circular brackets, and then you have curly brackets. Make sure you close them. Okay, and inside of the curly brackets, you will write the statement that should take place if, like, if the if condition is true. So you have if, and then you have else. So you've already given a condition for if, so you don't have to give a condition for else. So you can just write if, the condition, then the curly brackets, followed by else, and then the curly brackets, and make sure that they are closed. So if you can see, if the earnings is less than 500,000, then the taxes will be equal to earnings into 0.2. According to the pseudocode, this is the computation that has to be taken place. And in the else is, if it's an else statement, then if you write taxes is equal to earnings into 0.3. Right? So we have done all the things that are there. We took the input, which is expressed by read, then we did the computations, and then we have the if and else statement. Finally, is you have to display the taxes. So in JavaScript, when you have to display anything, you have to use the keyword alert and then the circular brackets. And inside of the circular brackets, you can like mention what you want to display. In this case, we want to display the taxes. So I will just say taxes, and don't forget to put the semicolon. So this is the entire script for this particular pseudocode. So let's just try to run this one now. So I run the code and it asks me for revenue. So I'll say revenue was 100. And then the next input, it asks me for the expense, and I'll say the expense is 50. And then it finally does the calculation and tells me, okay, so the taxes for this amount of revenue and this amount of expense is 10. So like you saw in like the alert box, which showed us the output, it just showed us the value of taxes. But you can also have like a sentence, like you can say the tax is, and then followed by whatever the value of the variable is. And it's very easy to do. Inside of the alert statement, you just have to use the double quotes. And inside of the double quotes, write whatever sentence you want to. So let me just write the tax is, and then you have to write a plus sign and followed by whatever the variable name is. So that is how you can use like sentences as well to be displayed inside of the alert statement. We can try to run the code once and see how the output looks now. So now you can see that it says the tax is so and so. So that is what you can do. So that was our first program. Let's move on to our next program, which is based on the second pseudocode that we wrote for the food ordering problem. So again, let's go through the pseudocode. And it says start, and then you read in the number of burgers and also the number of pizzas. And then after that, you do a computation of the total cost. And the computation is total cost is, burgers into 5 plus pizzas into 8. And then again, you have a conditional statement which says if the total cost is greater than 10, then you have to provide a free coupon. And finally, you display the total cost. So in this example, what are the variables? Let's figure out what the variables are. So the first variable would be the number of burgers. The second variable would be the number of pizzas. And the third variable is the total cost. So let's go ahead to our editor and just clear everything out that we have written. And now start coding for this problem statement. So first we will mention the variables. So the variables are the number of burgers, so I'll just denote it by burgers. Then the number of pizzas, so I'll just say pizzas. And then we have the total cost. So I will just call it total cost, followed by a semicolon. Do not forget that. After that, there is a computation that is done. But before that, let's try to get the inputs for how many number of pizzas and burgers are there from the user. So I'll say burgers is equal to prompt. And then inside of that, I will write number of burgers with a semicolon. And then I'll do the same for pizzas. So I'll write prompt number of pizzas and then a semicolon. After this, we have to do a computation and where we have to find the total cost. So we'll say total cost is equal to, and the formula is the number of burgers have to be multiplied by 5 and the number of pizzas have to be multiplied by 8. So that is done. We did the computation as well. And now the next part is that we have to do the conditional statement, and there is just the if statement. So we will just write if circular brackets. Inside of the circular brackets, we have to write the condition. So the condition is if total cost is greater than 10. And let's have the curly braces. And inside of the curly braces, let's mention if the total cost is greater than 10, then what should be done. So here it says that you need to provide a free coupon. So let's create a variable here and let's call it provide coupon. And since if the total cost is greater than 10, we have to give a free coupon. Let's just say like, the variable provide coupon should be true. And finally, you just have to display the total cost. So I will say alert total cost. Now, if you see in this code, it is pretty simple. And it was exactly like what we did for the previous example as well. Only with one change. Here, inside of the if statement, we have created a variable and set the variable, like given the variable a value. So when you're initializing variables, you can either do it this way at the start of the code where you just write var and give all the variable names that are there. Or if you sometimes forget to initialize the variable here, like we did for this one, it's absolutely fine. You can do it anytime in the code as well. All you have to do is make sure that you initialize and tell the code that it is a variable. So I cannot write this. I cannot just say provide coupon equal to true because the code doesn't know what is provide coupon. If I had mentioned provide coupon here in line number 3, it would have been fine. But because I did not, because I did not realize I might need it, and later in the code I realized I wanted to use it, I can just write var and give the variable name and set it a value, and that's absolutely fine. So let's just run this code. It is asking us for the inputs. So the number of burgers I'm giving 2, the number of pizzas I'm giving 3. It does the calculation and gives us the final answer, which is the total cost. So this was our third code, which was about the food ordering. Now let's go on to, sorry, that was the second code, and now we are on to our third code. So the third code is about, the same. It's the pseudocode of the store discount example that we did in the previous recitation. And we will be using that pseudocode to write the code for this one. So let's get into the pseudocode and see what it is. So it's you read the cardholder category, and if the cardholder category is true, then you have to check for another condition, that is if it is a gold member, then you have the discount, like the discount is 20%, otherwise the discount is 10%. And in general, if you do not hold any category of cards, then your discount is 0%, and then eventually you just display the discount. So again, let's try to find out what our variables are. So we can see that the cardholder category would be one variable. Okay. Then what is the membership type? Like if he or she is a gold member or not, we have to know that, right? So the cardholder, the cardholder would be one variable. The membership would be another variable, and the third variable is discount. So these are the three variables that we will be using. So let's go back to our code, and I'm just going to clear out this. And first, let's initialize the variables. So I'll say var. First is the cardholder type. So I'll just say var cardholder. Next is the membership type. So I'll just say membership. And the third is what is the discount, followed by a semicolon. Okay. Then let's go back and see. We have done, you have to read the cardholder category. So that's the first prompt you will take. You want to know what is the, like, if the person holds a card or does not hold a card, okay? And then in the end, you have like, if the member is a gold member or not. So you have two inputs in this case. So let's just go to the first one and say cardholder. And you say prompt, are you a card holder? And if you realize, this is not like a numeric input that the user is going to give. The user will answer in yes or no. So I will just let the user know, okay, you have a choice to answer yes, or you have the choice to answer no. And the next is membership. So I will try to ask what membership type the user holds. So I'll say prompt and enter the membership category. Okay, so we have asked for the prompts as well. Now, next is we have to write these conditional statements. The first is if the person is a card holder, then you have to check for another statement and see if the membership is gold. If both the things hold true, then the discount is 0.2. And if not, then the discount is 0.1. And in general, if it is going to be 0%. So let's go ahead and code this. I'll say if, and then I will write my condition, which is card holder is equal to yes. So note that over here in the prompt, I have given the option yes and no, which is like they are in small, they're not capitalized. So I have to make sure that when I'm writing the condition as well, I write all the words in the small case, so that because when the user is going to read this, the user will just type it in small case, and I have to make sure that it matches. So I'll say if the card holder is equal to yes, then I will have my curly braces. Okay. Otherwise, I will have an else statement. Okay. Now inside of this if statement, I have another if statement. So let's go ahead and write that. So I'll say if and the membership is equal to gold, then again I have my curly braces here. So if the cardholder value is yes and the membership is equal to gold, then my discount is going to be 0.2. Okay. And for this if statement, let's write the else statement as well. Okay. Else the discount is going to be 0.1. And in general, if the person is not a card holder, then the discount is 0. So this is how we can write our conditions. And in the end, we can just display the discount. So let's try to run this code. And so the first question is, are you a card holder? I will just go ahead and say yes. And then I just have to enter my membership category, which is gold. So I will do that. And then it tells me, okay, my discount is 0.2. So my code is working correctly. I can try, testing it for different input samples as well. If I just say no, then and I just say no, and it will just give me 0. So the code is working correctly. And so that was about like the 3 programs that we wanted to do for this recitation. On this slide, you will find the Google link form that you have to fill to be marked for attendance for this recitation. So make sure you do that within 1 week's time. And thank you, and I will meet you in the next recitation.